Gotcha.
Welcome to my updated review for the Queen Vespoid Horn. The Queen Vespoid Horn is a Rarity 7 hunting horn in Monster Hunter World. That means it comes with 2 augmentation slots. You could probably build attack and affinity. You could skip either one of those and build health regen, but one of the problems with this horn is that the attack value on this weapon is a bit lower than you'd want it to be. It does come with a white sharpness bar starting out. I went ahead and built Handicraft. You could arguably build Protective Polish or Speed Sharpening, but I figure Handicraft is probably your best option. It's possible that Protective Polish could be a more efficient option as long as you're bringing the Wetfish scales, but I think it'd be pretty close, and I think Handicraft already does such a great job. Now it comes with 2 small decoration slots, which is actually pretty useful here because we're going to use those decoration slots to continue to build paralysis, which is really the thing we're looking at on this horn. You see, it has a starting value of 300 damage with paralysis, and that's higher than any of the other hunting horns in the game. The closest comparable horn is the only other paralysis horn, the Fortissimo, and it has only 270 paralysis and it's locked. So in order to get that 270, you have the cost of unlocking it with the free element skill. Now, even in the case of unlocking it on Fortissimo, which horn is better is still going to be kind of a close call because Fortissimo has terrific buffs, whereas the Queen Vespoid Horn doesn't have as good of buffs, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Alright, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the build. You'll notice I have Attack 4, Paralysis 3, Weakness Exploit 3. I have Handicraft only at 3. I feel like it only needs 3 points of Handicraft. Then I have Maximum Might at 3, 1 point in Crit Boost, Horn Maestro, of course. So when we take a closer look at the build, you'll notice I have an empty rank 2 decoration slot, and that's going to be for another Crit Boost decoration whenever I unlock it. They're pretty rare. When I have a 3rd Crit Boost gem, I'm probably going to move the build around a little bit so that I can get Crit Boost 3 onto the build, and I can do that by giving up a level of Maximum Might. Now we have to move on to talking about the buffs on this hunting horn. Obviously, buffs are really important on all of the hunting horns, and they kind of tell you if it's good or bad. The first thing I noticed, no attack up large on this horn, so right off the bat, this is not going to be one of your best horns, because the attack up large is so useful in a group since it boosts everybody's damage output. Alright, so we have stamina use reduced. That's not bad. Stamina use reduced can help people like anybody using the bow. The bow's a very popular weapon in the game right now. Also dual blades. Both of those weapons to some degree rely on their stamina in order to deal more damage. I think one of the downsides too though is that when you run into somebody who's good with the bow or good with the dual blades, usually they have a consumable with them and they just boost their own stamina. But I guess if you were with friends, you could tell them don't spend your consumables, I'll just keep the stamina use reduced large buff going. It also helps with Maximum Might, which you'll be using yourself. So, it's kind of a nice thing, but it's not the most important buff. It's an okay buff. Then we have All Wind Pressure Negated. Some monsters, similar to Aurora, they're able to cause you to stagger with wind. In this case, All Wind Pressure Negated is going to be able to counter the strongest types of wind that you get from Kushala Daora, but there's better weapons to use against Kushala Daora, so it doesn't really make sense to use this horn against him. I suppose if you couldn't build a Xenomana Sheena, or you didn't want to use the Royal Chord Maker, this would be an okay alternative. The Queen Vespoid Horn would still give your whole team all wind pressure negated. However, fighting Kushala Daora, your team may still prefer to have attack up large. So I wouldn't call all wind pressure negated necessarily good on this horn either. Next we have defense up large. Defense up large is always good. I never have a complaint about defense up large, other than if you're fighting a monster where everybody's really good and nobody's taking damage, it's not very useful. It works the same way when you're building your character. If you're real good at the game and you understand the monster you're fighting really well, the need for defense, it kind of has a diminishing return, doesn't it? But in this case, when you're playing with randoms, defense up large, it's always good in my opinion. Finally, you have ice resist boost large. Now this is interesting. You could have ice resist boost large and defense up large on the same build. The problem is we don't have any really dangerous ice monsters yet. We have Legiana, which back when I started playing the game, Legiana was annoying and tough. Now Legiana is like one of the easiest threat level 2 monsters in the game. He's dead in 3, 4, 5 minutes. He's on the floor the whole match. Very easy. You don't need ice resist boost right now, but in the future they might add a very serious monster where you really do want to have this buff. And when that happens, you might be taking another look at the Queen Vespoid Horn, because if that ice monster also happens to be weak to paralysis, maybe this would be a pretty fair choice. Finally, we have Sonic Waves. Now, this is what's interesting about Sonic Waves. I looked at the Hunter's notes, and 2 monsters in particular who are weak to paralysis with 3-star weakness are actually Diablos and Black Diablos. Sonic Waves is basically a Screamer pod, except it has kind of a wind-up, so it's not very consistent when you're fighting them. But if I was going to use Queen Vespoid Horn, I would probably use it against Diablos and Black Diablos, because you can queue up the Sonic Waves and then you could try to stun them while they're underground, and at the same time you're going to have that 3-star weakness to paralysis, so just stay on top of them, give your team defense up large. I think that's going to help your team against Diablos and Black Diablos, because one of the problems with them is that they just deal so much damage when they hit you, right? It's very straightforward. They're a physical enemy type, they run into you and it deals a ton of damage. So defense up large is going to be appreciated, stamina use reduced, maybe get a little more damage on the bows and the dual blades, and maybe a few other weapons, right? Like maybe the switch axes. And then finally, Sonic Waves. If you actually practice using Sonic Waves, I've found that kind of the trick is to get it going early when you think the monster is about to start digging underground, and by the time they're underground it pops out and it actually does work just like a Screamer pod. So Sonic Waves and Paralysis is going to make this weapon not that bad against Diablos and Black Diablos, and that's my recommendation for who to use it against. Now for the overall score for this weapon, it's got 2 major negative things going for it. It lacks attack up large, and it lacks a high attack value. So as a hunting horn, I'm going to have to say this either comes in upper C or lower B. I'll give it, I think lower B is fair. It's going to get a B- in terms of tier rating. And that's everything I have to say about the Queen Vespoid Horn. It's one of the best looking hunting horns in Monster Hunter World, and between Sonic Waves and Paralysis, it's not bad against Diablos and Black Diablos. However, its low attack value followed by a kind of weak buff moveset makes this not one of the better horns in Monster Hunter World. It's just kind of mediocre. Alright, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh my gosh, you guys! I just want to thank y'all so much!